Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, and today our special guest is Mackenzie Stannard. Mackenzie is a Canadian filmmaker driven to tell true stories that challenge and reshape the country's social and political landscape. He began his career as a Peter Gzowski intern at CBC Radio, later working on documentary series for outlets like National Geographic and HGTV before moving into independent film production. His first film, This Ink Runs Deep, premiered at Toronto Film Festival and streamed on CBC Gem. Over 5 years, he has produced multiple documentaries shown by major platforms and festivals. Since his 2022 directorial debut at the Whistler Film Festival, he has continued directing, including for CBC. Living with ADHD, he champions stories that uplift neurodiverse voices. His latest project, Constant Battles, follows Nyousha Nakhjiri, Canada's #1 ranked flyweight boxer, on her high-stakes quest to compete in the Olympics, a dream that demands absolute perfection. So welcome, Mackenzie.
Thanks for having me.
So can you tell me a little bit about your background?
Yeah. I mean, my background as a filmmaker, or like, you want to go, how far back do we want to go?
You want to start from birth? No.
Yeah,
Quick
I'm
summary.
born a baby.
Where were you born, actually?
So I grew up in just outside of Edmonton, Alberta, in a place called Sherwood Park.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved to Vancouver when I was 19, not to study film. Like, I always loved movies. My first real job, well, I put real around quotation marks, I guess, but the first job I had to send in a resume and apply for an interview for, and was at Rogers Video, the DVD rental store. And yeah, I just love movies, but growing up in a smaller town in Edmonton, it didn't really seem like a real career. Or, I didn't know anybody who worked in that world. But yeah, when I moved to Vancouver, and I wanted to be a journalist, and I studied communication, and then kind of did a backup in business just in case the journalism thing didn't work out. And yeah, I did a bunch of things before I found my way into the filmmaking world. Like, I was 25 before I ever worked on a film set. I had worked in politics for a member of parliament, and at the BC Lions, the CFL team, and like for the university. And but yeah, I was really lucky to get the Peter Gzowski internship at CBC, and worked as a chase producer or story producer there for radio shows, and got a good education and storytelling in that medium when I was there. But always when I was there, it didn't really line up for me on how quickly we had to tell a story. Like, you got to pitch 3 stories a day,
Yes.
and you get assigned one, and you tell one story, and then you're done with it, right? And now my work's more like, you spend 2 or 3 years with the story, which is too long. I need to find a happy medium. Like, a couple months would be great.
Okay. So you were an intern at CBC Radio, and then how did you end up like on the doing film?
I guess just like sheer force of will and curiosity. I met some people. It's kind of a weird story, but I had this weird side gig in university, being the English MC at Chinese events in Vancouver.
You were that guy.
I was that
Okay.
guy. I was that guy.
Yes.
Yeah. And one of them was a film festival in Vancouver that a group was starting out and
Mhm.
putting together. And I met some instructors from the Vancouver Film School there, and producers and people who weren't that much older than me working in the industry. And I was like, wow, like, that was my first exposure to it, to actually seeing people that were making a life doing that. And I started asking them questions of, how do I do this? And they connected me with some people who had recently graduated from film school, and I started, I guess, volunteering on those sets as like a
Mhm.
co-producer, and learned how to make things with them, and people that I'm still friends with, or even work with today. So yeah, I had that didn't go to film school, but then worked on projects initially where no one was paying me. If anything, I was paying to to work on them because
Well, you
a
got an
film story
education that way,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then with some people that I met through doing that, we had some ideas for documentaries and we took them to CBC through some connections that I had made while working there and one of them got greenlit, which was This Ink Runs Deep. And we were really lucky to work with a talented team and make a beautiful film there. And so yeah, the first documentary I ever I mean there was little ones like in school or things that I made on my own that just kind of like went out on YouTube and we're looking back at it, we're not that good, but the first thing that anyone ever commissioned from me or that I was involved with ended up premiering at TIFF, which are very, very fortunate. And after that, I was able to continue to work on documentaries. And I started working in commercials, like kind of did the same thing and worked on some spec ads with directors kind of for free, just learning how to produce. And I did the commercial thing to kind of pay for my documentary habit for a while.
But no, I'm listening to you about your journey, and I think a lot of people don't realize how valuable volunteering can be because you're learning from all these different people you might not necessarily have access to if it was a paid gig. I mean, I think people are always willing to share if you ask and for the knowledge, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe sometimes people can get stuck in the volunteering thing for too long. But
Well, that's true too. The forever
yeah,
intern, free
yeah,
intern.
but yeah, but no, I would recommend it for sure when you're starting out, or even if you're starting out in a new position in the industry, like or just on set, or like, yeah, don't be afraid to um just to get out there and help. There's also like I still volunteer in different capacities, right? But yeah, if there's a project that I really believe in and the people need help, and sometimes it's better, even more strategic from like your own time management of instead of taking a really, really low rate just to be like, I'm going to volunteer because then you can kind of come and go when you want.
That's true. It's less commitment. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. As soon as you accept money, no matter how much it is, but even if it's a tiny little amount, then they're paying you. You're on their schedule.
So you've been telling all these little stories in your documentaries. What makes you decide that you want to film it and spend time to make the story?
Yeah, I think there isn't like a rubric or a criteria that I'm like checking off a list. I think you just I kind of feel it, and for me, it's usually starts with questions in either a world or a character that fascinates me and something that I think I'm going to be able to learn through the process of making it. And then, hopefully by the time that the film's done, then we can condense all of that learning and knowledge and that experience into one coherent film. But yeah, I'm the type of, I don't really have, like in the world of like content creation, people are, it's always about like find your niche, find your niche. And I don't know if I really could find a niche just because for me, I get drawn towards what I don't know.
I think like in the past, like when you think about like Leonardo, like the artist, like he did so many different things, right? Like he wasn't just an artist; he was a mathematician, engineer, and stuff like that. But now people are more like you know what I mean? Like everyone's too specific, I think. It's a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah,
different.
and I'm sure things work differently for different brains, right? So if in some ways I envy people that are can go, this is my focus, and I can get really, really deep and keep telling stories in this world. But for me, I'm just little too curious of, yeah. So, like for this one in particular, I realized that I didn't know much about what was going on in Iran, and to be honest, I usually look too of like the people around me, and I'm like, you know what, I don't have that many Iranian friends, and also at the same time I was really interested in boxing, and that's kind of what drew me to Nyousha in the first place. Of like I was getting interested in boxing and looking for boxing stories and people doing interesting things in that world, and I stumbled upon Nyousha, and saw what she was up to and just reached out, and we had a conversation. And then from her learning more about what was going on in Iran and her mom's story, I was like, wow, there's a beautiful story to tell here, and one that is unfolding as like we could be filming and talking. Like I think a lot of the work that I've done in the past has been retrospective. Kind of the story's already happened, and now we're talking to the main subjects about what happened. And I thought it would be an interesting challenge, and it was, to film something as it unfolds that, Tellus was amazing to give us a green light and start filming before we really knew what was going to happen.
I guess, yeah, for documentaries, you're watching something for a long period and then, you take edits from what's happened. So, but was it hard to convince your subject to be part of this? I mean, I don't know if it's like, is it intrusive or like, you know what I mean? Like, what kind of relationship do you have to build with them?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it was hard to convince her to be part of it, and to make a film together. Um, but I think it always comes up at times in the film that maybe the subjects, it's not so much about like the initial convincing. It's more about through the film being on the same page of like what's going to be a good story and how to and yeah, there are intrusive moments, right? And I think it's a bit of a push and pull of as a filmmaker, you always want more, and even to go
And you
deep.
want the
Maybe,
drama, the
yeah,
excitement, you feel like
yeah,
so
yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Totally, like maybe to even see parts of people that maybe they don't want to put out on
Mm.
public display. And so yeah, I think that's like a constant negotiation, and negotiation's a weird word. It's just, but I think you know what I mean. And for me, yeah, it's all about building trust with the people that you're making the film about. And yeah, I so far have really tried to make films about people who want a film made about them.
Oh, yes, that helps.
Yeah, it does help for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole other type of documentary that you're making films about people who don't want that story told, and that's an interesting challenge, and one I'd be up for in the future, but haven't really gone there. And so yeah, I see it as a partnership with the people that we're making the film about, and yeah, at times that can be challenging during the process because you're, as a filmmaker, you're like, oh, if only we could turn the cameras on right now. Even there's a moment in the film that Nyousha tells me to turn the camera off, and I agree because like
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
yeah, you told me not to film, right? But that's also those moments are really
Yeah.
compelling as somebody.
Yeah.
So it's a weird position to put yourself in though as a documentary filmmaker. I can't imagine people who work on like unscripted TV shows because it's like
Oh boy. Yeah.
you
Or a
care
live
about your
audience, even
yeah,
like.
you care. Yeah, but you care about people, right? Like you care, like I'm making this film about Nyousha and her family because I care about them and we have this deep relationship and like you just want the best for them. And then also you have this like little voice in your head that's like, oh, they're not doing very well right now. This is really interesting to your audience, right? So there's
Mm.
almost kind of like um, two voices going on in your brain of that person searching for a good story and the drama, and then the person who really cares about the people that are on camera.
Now, did you think the story changed from initially when you first approached her? Well, I guess you don't really know how things would unfold. Or did you
Well,
have a sense?
I didn't know how it would unfold, but I think I kind of deluded myself into like being like, oh, she's gonna win, and we're telling a classic sports story here, and it's gonna be this amazing thing that she's the first Iranian woman to go to the Olympics for boxing, and that's definitely how I pitched it. And and I wanted to keep that confidence up for Nyousha because that's where her head
Mhm.
was at, and that's where it needs to be as an athlete or like doing anything, right? And so I did keep that confidence up, and then when I mean, yeah, kind of give away the some of the film, but she doesn't reach her goals at times, and we definitely had to pivot both while we were making the film and then again even after, or sorry, while we were shooting, and start thinking about like, whoa, where does this go now? And now we're really just following her story and seeing like how she reacts to this, and then in the edit. yeah, I basically had to like throw out the script that I was trying to follow as much as you follow a script in a documentary, but and just go back to the drawing board and yeah, and I think in it ended up being a better film because we focused more on her relationship with her mom and the mental aspects of things and yeah, the themes just became different and I'm actually quite appreciative of that because we started this conversation about talking about me personally looking for films that I'm going to learn from. And I think sometimes you learn more from the losses than the wins. And I think I learned more
Yeah,
from Nyousha's story this way and brought more lessons from that into my own life than if it just, it was a cleaner
yeah,
victory. Yeah.
yeah. It'll be your next documentary when she wins the next one. So,
Yeah, well, it sounds
yeah.
like she might be. I mean, well, so right now she's at the World Cup in Brazil, and yeah, she might try to make another push to go to the Olympics in 2028, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah,
Now, was there a moment during filming that completely surprised you during the documentary?
I mean, I'm sure there was lots. I haven't really thought about that if there was a moment that really surprised me. Um, I think in the conversation that Nyousha has with her mom, they're sitting at a kitchen table, and we set that up, and that we wanted to get them in the same space and having a conversation. I think they went places in that conversation, both like topic wise and emotionally, that I was surprised that they went. And yeah, it was a cool thing to be a part of. You have a camera crew there, but it really, I think that was a moment that the camera crew kind of disappeared and it felt like you were just watching the film and watching these two women talk and you felt lucky to be there and a part of that.
Okay. Now, obviously, you have hundreds of hours of footage. So, how do you decide what to keep and what not to keep?
Yeah. Um, to be honest, at the beginning of it, I wasn't that good at that in this film. Like this went through a lot of versions and I think it's you know, um, through making the film, I realized that I have ADHD. And I think I was bouncing around on like what to focus on a lot. So I was like, that's interesting, and that's interesting, and that's interesting. And then the film really started finding its voice when we just stripped out everything else and really focused on like that relationship between her and her mother and her learning this lesson of being flexible and being adaptable. And when we really like boiled it down to this is the theme of the film, and although there's a bunch of other things that are really interesting, there's beautiful footage of her boxing and fighting, there's funny moments between her and her coach, there's interesting history in Iran, there's interesting like I shot actually hours of her going to therapy and like understanding her brain a little bit more and like all of that. And the original cut had a lot of that stuff in it. And eventually it was just like, no, this film's about one thing. And if we make it about too many things, it just gets
Mm.
a little convoluted. So I think back to answering your question, how do you decide is I think you really have to decide what the core theme is, like what is the film about? And then if the footage or the interview segment isn't serving that, then it doesn't need to be in the film.
Okay. Now, what kind of conversations do you hope this film sparks?
I think, I mean, there's already conversations going on about women's rights in Iran and the politics of Iran, but I think also that's kind of been overshadowed by some of the like war games and political maneuvering that's happening right now, which, this whole chapter of um, conflict in Iran is something that we never anticipated when we were making the film. And so I hope that maybe it brings the conversation back to the experience of women in Iran and what they're fighting for, and that fight is important, incredibly important. Um, yeah, and then I think I hope that when people watch the film, that they themselves, if they're going through a bit of perfectionism or like disappointment of chasing something that maybe just hasn't worked out exactly how they wanted it to, like cut themselves some slack and yeah, learn some of the lessons that Nyousha learns through the film.
Cool. Now, are you working on any projects right now? The next project?
Yeah, always working on projects. There's a bunch of stuff, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in development right now, which is nice. I've kind of wrapped, since Constant Battles took a long time, so there was a few other films that were made in the meantime. It's just some short work that I directed and then some longer work that I produced. I also produce. Um, and yeah, there's I feel like I've had some time lately to go find some new stories that I'm excited about. But yeah, nothing in production yet.
Okay, now switching topics a bit for emerging filmmakers, what do you think's the biggest lessons you've learned while on your journey to filmmaking?
What are the biggest lessons? I mean, I've learned a lot of lessons. Um, I think, and they're different as a producer director as well. So, I have way more experience as a producer and um, for this, so maybe I'll stick to like, for this film as a director, which I still am like an emerging director. Don't have that many credits and I'm still learning a lot. Like I learned so much through Constant Battles. So I think through Constant Battles as a director, I learned to um I learned to the it sounds so like simple, but just like the importance of actually sticking to your vision and building a team of people who understand that vision. Like, when we're making films, it is a collaborative process and you need other talented people to help you bring this vision to life. And just I was really lucky to work with people who saw that vision and had patience with me to like go on the adventure of finding the vision. But there were times of frustration where I know people would be looking to me, be like, what film are we making here right now? And at times I knew and at times I didn't. And really when things went way more smoothly all around, when like I had an answer and I could stick to that. And when I had people around me that just like accepted the answer, because the more room of doubt that you give people to, then the more of like their ideas come up. And now you're making 14 different films, right? So I think through making this film, I really started to, or not started to, I really like solidified my understanding of the director as just that keeper of the vision, keeper of the story, of keeping everybody on track of this is the film we're making. That might be a great idea, but it's for a different film. Like bring it to your next one. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you. Yeah.
The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Helix Press. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.